going to have to apologize for some of the audio that was recorded in the audio track for the video that follows. I didn't realize that my mic was so high, so some of the audio is clipped and I don't have time to re-record it. Anyway, hopefully you still enjoy it. So let's go. Hello. It's Richard once again, and in this rewind, I will be sharing with you why real estate has been the best investment that we have made so far. Actually, it's the bestest. Now, last time I shared the many reasons why I was missing and why I'm now back. Let me drop the hint one more time. It's time to grow again. When the pandemic hit earlier this year, we wondered, just like many other real estate investors, if we would be up the creek with our rent payments. While we always thought that it could be possible for a couple of our residents to lose their jobs in a downturn, we never ever imagined a scenario where all of them could lose their income at the same time. That was impossible. However, this pandemic has caught us all off guard, and with the passing of each month, we still are being surprised by which industry is regarded as the new casualty in the economy. In March, I communicated with all our residents, and some expressed their fear of possibly not being able to pay their rent. And some went even further to start asking whether we would be able to help them out with rent abatement. Now, I kept my responses measured, and I asked these residents who directed the questions to seek the financial help that was being announced daily by the government, and I hinted strongly that with this help from the government, there was really no reason for them not to be able to pay their rent. And actually, that was true. For the most part, we received the rent continuously, and we didn't have a problem with them paying their rent. I also made it clear that the owners of the properties would not be in a position to forgive rent payments, as there was no such announcement that I knew of that mentioned forgiving owners for their mortgage payments, for their property taxes, their utility bills, and so on that they have responsibility over. Now, since we operate our units from our property management company, our ownership of any of these units are never disclosed to our residents. So as far as they're concerned, we're strictly the property managers acting on behalf of the owners. And so far, this strategy has proved useful, as it has helped us to install a buffer between ourselves and the residents. Some of the properties we manage, we own indirectly as partnerships as well. So, we try to keep everything consistent. But I digress. In the chaos and fallout of the pandemic, did you notice that most investors got no help or support from actions taken by the government? Well, based on how things played out, we indirectly were able to wade through the rough currents of the pandemic with a little help from the actions taken by the government, even though they were not intentionally done for real estate investors. So let's think about what happened. Now, the first thing the government did was they offered money to residents that were out of work or who had experienced reduced income. And this money allowed them to be able to continue to pay their rent, hence allowing us to continue to meet our obligations over the period. The government also went ahead to lower the interest rate in a bid to help stimulate the economy, which in turn allowed us to renew a couple of our mortgages at a lower rate. And this immediately resulted in an increase in the cash flow for those properties. The banks were coerced by the government to offer mortgage deferrals for up to 6 months to help out residential property owners so that they wouldn't have to worry about missing their mortgage payments. Now, this action has allowed us to push back some of our mortgage payments so that we could be more prepared for the looming high unemployment crisis that we expect to follow. We don't know when this is going to end, so we took advantage of halting some of our payments so that we can see where things go. And according to one of our accountants, Because we hold property in a corporation, we may be able to access something called a CEBA loan. So that's the Canadian Emergency Business Account. And this would help us to build up a cash reserve in our corporation to help with daily operations if the economy doesn't recover as planned. Now, we don't know if we qualify or not for this, but I will talk about this some more in a future newsletter once I get the final verdict from the government. So in all the pandemonium, this pandemic has certainly confirmed two things to us. The first thing is that investing in an essential commodity like housing has proved to be a great long-term plan, as the government will always try to do everything in its power to prevent the citizens from losing their homes en masse. And the next thing is, although real estate is great, and we've been doing well so far with it, we still need to keep building and acquiring more diverse streams of income. And that is exactly why it's time to grow again. I can't say it enough, it's time to grow again. None of this was really on our minds when we decided to take the leap to invest in our second rental property back in 2012. I recall being a little scared, but I felt confident that if we ran into issues, we would have the support of the team at Rockstar Brokerage. So after searching around, we proceeded to buy our next rental property and just put our trust in the system taught to us by our coaches and mentors. And if we were to look back at our return on that investment for the property that we bought, this second property, I would say it was amazing. So I wanted you to indulge me a little bit right now while I share with you my story of this specific investment. So this is the property that we bought back in 2012, which was our second rental property. So we bought a home in Oshawa for $289,000. And it was a 5% down, plus closing costs. The initial investment, including some incidentals like inspection, cleaning, etc., came to around $23,592.91. However, to be generous, I'm just going to round this off to $25,000 just to make the math easy. So I'm going to put it over what we paid. So then we put a rent-to-own program on that property and collected a $10,000 deposit. And we set up monthly rentals with the tenant buyer of $1,795 per month, and that was supposed to be a 30-month term. Now, during that period, we paid very little maintenance as it was rent to own, and we had about a $25 in cash flow each month. $25, not a lot, but it was positive. However, at about the 28-month mark, we started to have problems or issues with the residents, and things kind of escalated after they both lost their jobs due to various personal issues that they were having at the time. And at that point, it became more evident that our initial plan for them to buy this property wasn't going to materialize, since it was very unlikely that they would be in a position to qualify for the mortgage. They lost their jobs. Obviously, they stopped paying their rent, and even though we tried to work with them, to put it kindly, shortly after the relationship between us deteriorated to a point where we had to evict them. It was beyond, it was bad. And in the end, of course, we took a loss with the eviction, as we were owed around $5,555 in unpaid rent. And there was some damages to the property. Not major, it wasn't anything bad like that, but there was some excessive use of the property. And we got an order for the rent, not the damage, from the LTB for that amount. Now, we were very disappointed with the outcome, as they were a younger couple. They had 2 kids. The kids really liked the home and they really wanted to stay. But their actions made it impossible for them to stay, and it didn't even make any sense to us. In fact, even the neighbors next door came over to share how weird their actions had become in the months leading up to the eviction process. It's like they were just different people. And to this day, we always wonder if they had been more reasonable with the way that they responded to their job loss, if somehow we could have worked something out. We really don't know, but we did the best we could. Well, once we reclaimed the home, after we got them evicted, we deliberated over what we're going to do next with the home, because at the time, we were still young in the investment game, and we thought that with a 5% down mortgage that we had put on it, our mortgage payment was too high for us to turn it into a straight rental and still collect enough money to have it cash flow. Oh, we were so young. Anyway, we decided we were going to sell the house. So we got a contractor and he came in to spruce the place up. And he did a great job on the entire home. And in 4 weeks, it was spanking new again. It looked like it looked in the beginning. And we met with our agent, and she said that she could list it for $380,000. We said, what? That doesn't make any sense. How can it be $380,000? I mean, we just bought it for $289,000, and it's just been 3 years. What is she talking about? Is she crazy? And she said, no. We can get it for that, because we had planned to sell it to the tenant buyers for $355,000, and we felt very nervous about that price because we didn't even think it would go to that price. We were figuring, okay, maybe when the time comes, we're gonna have to renegotiate with them in order to get them to buy the house. But we let it go. But after receiving multiple offers on this home, we eventually were able to sell it for around $405,000 in the end. So what was our return on this home? Now recall, I made the initial investment of $25,000. That's the rounded up value. But because we got an option fee, an option to purchase, we can take that to $10,000 and reduce to $25,000, which means our initial investment was really $15,000 because we got that $10,000 up front when the person moved in. And now, as discussed, we eventually sold the home for $405,000. But to spare us all the complex calculations, I'm going to show you a copy of the check that we got from the lawyer. Here it is. So in effect, this meant that we plunked down $15,000 and we got this beautiful check of $116,000 from our lawyer. Not bad, eh? Now hold on to your horses. That really wasn't all profit, because we did have some expenses that I mentioned. The loss of rent, that was something that we didn't expect, so that would have come out of the proceeds. And also we had to do some repairs on the home. And if I were to add up all of that, the loss of rent plus the repairs, I would say I could round up that value to around $13,555 was probably the total that we had to come out of pocket to get the home to the point where we could sell it. So if you were to subtract our initial investment of $15,000 along with the losses that I just mentioned of $13,555, we will end up with a magical number of $87,540.92. Now that was amazing. It meant that we were able to have a profit of $87,000 on an investment that we made 3 years ago. Up to that point, we have never made such a return, ever. And we started to do our happy dance. Now, we can report these gains because when you sell, it makes it easier to take stock of these kinds of numbers. However, in the case where we refinanced and used the money to buy more properties, and then we refinanced and used the money to buy other properties, you can see that it becomes very difficult to calculate what your actual returns are. And so the calculations kind of go to a whole nother level. Now, if I were to represent this in the typical way that people would represent ROI when they're doing their calculations, I would say that our ROI of $87,000 divided by $15,000 would be around 583.6%. That's over the 3-year period, or if you want to annualize it, it would be around 194.5%. That is ridiculous. I think it's worth mentioning again. We made a whopping 194.5% return per year for 3 years. That's insane. Now, what other investments have given us such a return? don't have one. We have not made one so far, but when we do, I will mention it to you and let you know. And that's not even the icing on the cake. Remember, I told you that we came out of pocket $15,000 in order to do the 5% down. But that wasn't actually entirely true, because that 15K was money that we actually took from our line of credit. So that was other people's money. That was the bank's money that we took from our line of credit in order to pay down on that home. So if we were to be more specific, all that really came out of our pocket was just the interest on the 15K for those 3 years, and the interest on the lost rent, and I guess the repairs as well that we had to do in the end. And of course, as we know, the interest rate never exceeded 2.9% during that time. So do you realize what that meant? I won't bore you with all the complicated calculations again, but it means our real ROI on our actual investment was 50 times what we put in. And of course, that money didn't actually sit around with us for too long, as it went right back out into buying more properties so that we could grow our real estate investment portfolio. So we didn't see it for long, but it was nice, when we got the check and Ingrid brought it home and we looked at it and we were like, wow. And then we had to deposit the money and it was gone after that. Now, to get that kind of return, we had to hustle. We actually drove around Oshawa and we looked at over 100 houses. I kid you not. We made offers on some of them because some of them were terrible. And once we got an accepted offer, then we had to jump through the lending hoops in order to close on the property. And then once we had the property, we had to show the home to prospects for every other day, sometimes every day if it's on the weekends, so every other weekday, and then on the weekends for an entire month. We had to fraternize with good and bad prospects. And then for 28 months after that, we just collected the rent, we did inspections, and answered service calls. Then for the last 8 months, we had to endure a couple of ridiculous emails, bad, from the residents, and we had to visit the LTB a couple times. Then after they left, we had to fix the house up, and then we finally sold it. That entire experience definitely was not passive, but I don't know of any other investment that would have allowed us to invest $38 per month for 36 months and then walk away with over $85,000 and an IOU of $5,555. And the IOU is because the tenant owes us that rent still, but for now it's just an IOU. So I can emphatically say, without a doubt, that real estate has been the bestest investment we have ever made for our whole investing career. Now, we went on to buy 2 other rentals in Oshawa and several others in other areas after that one. And most of them are still chugging along, but I'm afraid to work out the returns on those as I might get the error symbol on my trusty calculator. I really can't tell you what the returns on them are. All I can tell you is that up to this point, we have no regrets. The only regret that we've had so far is when we have sold maybe 2 of our properties, but we don't really sell them anyway. We just keep them for the long term. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, we'll go over to one of my favorite quotes for this month, and it is, if you want something you've never had, then you've got to do something you've never done. Now, I love this quote. It's exactly what we have done and we keep doing in order to move forward. Sometimes it feels like I'm going sideways. Sometimes it feels like I'm stuck and going nowhere. Sometimes it even feels like I'm going backwards, even though I'm probably not, but it feels that way. But no matter how I feel, I know that I have to make the push to keep going forward. I believe we all need to be like some of those sharks out there, the real sharks, not the other sharks. They only stop moving when they're dead. Now, I generally like being not dead, so I will keep moving until I can't go anymore. And I really hope that you'll keep moving along as well with me. Now, next time, I'll share my thoughts on my realization of why savers are the biggest losers. Now, I want you to drop me a line if you can, for those of you who have my personal email address. And for those of you who don't, I guess I won't hear from you because I want to hear what your plans are during this period when we definitely know that it's time to grow again. So until we talk again, happy investing, living, learning. We miss you, Second Rental. We miss you.